Hello, this is Telltale Books back again. I'm Greg,
I'm Emily.
and we have a treat today, something that I've actually never read. So I'm going to be Ed McMahon here and sit on the side and laugh at her or whatever, chuckle through the whole thing, because this is The Princess Bride. I have seen the movie. I'm not that bad.
Yeah. Okay, if you've seen the movie, you probably have a pretty good idea. I feel like the movie and the book are really accurate to each other. But
Okay.
we're going to go into the synopsis anyway. Princess Buttercup has been kidnapped by the dread pirate Roberts. And then kidnapped by Vizzidian, the fire swamp, and back and forth, and blah, 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 and yes. So basically, if you have seen The Princess Bride, it's a woman who falls in love with basically the house whipping boy. Her family's kind of well off, and so she falls in love with the farm boy, and he falls in love with her, but then he kind of gets shipped off to war to try and make some money so that he can come back and they can get married. But while he's away, Prince Humperdinck comes in and swoops and scoops her up. And how can you say no to a king when he could kill you? So there's that struggle, but then of course the king has all these conspiracies to kill his wife and blame it on a neighboring kingdom and all this other stuff. So there's of course this conflict where she's kidnapped then by the conspirators with the king, but then she's kidnapped by the dread pirate Roberts, who ends up being Wesley, the man she fell in love with. And I'm not giving away any spoilers anyway, because we pretty much all have seen The Princess Bride, and if you haven't,
Go watch it.
go watch the movie and
are you
also
waiting
read
for?
the book.
Yeah.
But that's not entirely why I love this book. The story is great. It's good comedy. In fact, the comedy in here is a lot better, I think, presented than the movie. The
Okay.
dialogue is almost verbatim. So if you've seen the movie, yeah, you've read the book. But this edition in particular has a few extra things that I think people would really, really like. This is the 25th anniversary edition. It is... I got this from my husband, but when we were... this is the 30th anniversary edition.
Okay.
But I got this from my husband when we were... This is the first gift he ever gave me when we were dating. But just the introduction. The introduction is just as much a part of this fiction as any other chapter in this book. Because the entire introduction, I think maybe 5% of it is true, if that. Because it recounts not only some of the tragedy of losing Andre the Giant during the film and the feelings that William Goldman had during that, but it is the entire research he did of these countries and how these wars happened and all this stuff, and why this is such a great story, and that this was a story historically passed down from generation to generation, and how this book wasn't basically it's an entire fiction about how this fiction was researched and written as if it was historically accurate.
You can't write a good book without good research.
It's true, and he writes his entire introduction as if these countries really existed and this stuff really happened. So that in and of itself is a treasure, because it's hilarious. And it's absolutely absurd because this never really happened, but he writes his introduction as if it did. So that's a treat. Please get this edition and read that. But in the back, there's also additions. After Andre the Giant passed away, he wrote an entire short story based off his character.
Oh.
Just for him, as homage to the man who brought this character to life. And also there's Buttercup's Baby, which is an edition about how Buttercup has a child.
Oh.
And the continuation of the family. So I really love this book, not just because of the story itself and how much we all treasure it as a cult classic, but the additional bits in this particular edition just made this an absolute delight to finally read for the first time. I feel personally the comedy is much better. The Six-Fingered Man and Prince Humperdinck have way more of like this homoerotic bromance going on, which is pretty hilarious. It wasn't well presented in the movie, but it's pretty much done well in here. But I just feel like William Goldman is a comedic genius. And this book and its little extras just prove it to me. It was a fantastic read, cover to cover, every single page. So I can't recommend it enough. And I absolutely love it, this particular edition. Yes.
A couple of interesting things. The book came out in 1973.
Yes.
Movie wasn't made until sometime in the mid-1980s. He only wrote 4 other books.
Yep.
One being Magic, which was made into a movie instantly. With, what's his name from Psycho?
I can't remember.
Anyway, that was kind of a big movie, but that was more of a horror film. It was about a ventriloquist puppet that comes to life and terrifies him.
Oh, yeah.
Really weird. The others that he wrote, I'm not familiar with. He died, of course, in 2018. And he comes from Highland Park, Illinois.
Yeah.
So he
talks about in his introduction, by the way. Yeah, which he talks about in his introduction, by the way. Super great. It's just...
Yeah, so his reputation mostly rests on this book. He wrote 4 other books, but those are mostly unknown today.
He really outlived his greatest work. And I think that happens a lot with authors.
And that was his first novel.
Yeah, it was his very first. It was an absolute hit. It is hilarious. It's just a great book with the loving story that, there are little bits and pieces that are slightly different, but for the most part, the movie and the book are the same story. But it's these little extras that I got in this edition that really sent me over the edge. Just the introduction alone, I was laughing my ass off. I even laughed when I was reading the introduction. And I am not a person who gets like super... I don't read a lot of comedy books personally. Because I don't find them as funny. Yeah,
comedy is really tough to do.
It's hard to do in literature.
It either works or it falls flat.
Yes, and he did it so well that I audibly laughed and had to put down the book because there were tears in my eyes. This was great.
The science fiction fantasy genres are, in particular, not well known for humor. Even though there have been a lot of good humorous writers like Henry Kuttner with the Twonky.
Yes, that was pretty
Frederick
funny.
Brown was pretty funny. Robert Sheckley, who I just bought a retrospective collection of his work online today. I should have that in a couple weeks. And Ron Goulart, he wrote some funny stories. There's, of course, there's Princess Douglas Bride. Adams. There is a pretty long list of humor in science fiction, fantasy, and horror.
Yes.
Yet, it's really hard to find anybody who would say that the genres are very good for humor.
Yeah, it is, which is so unfortunate because I feel like there's so much room for there to be good, absurd humor, especially. Tolkien.
And Vonnegut.
Yeah.
He was...
Yeah, Tolkien even had some great humorous moments and throughout the entire Lord of the Rings series where you're just like, that is funny. Like, a dragon eating you is a very absurd thing. Willingly going into a dragon's lair to try and steal something is very much an absurd situation that I feel like needs to be diffused with humor. This entire book was diffusing these absurd, crazy, why would anybody do this situations with humor. Breaking the fourth wall occasionally, that kind of stuff is really, it's just so good. And like, there's so much room for that in science fiction and fantasy because you're already leaning so heavily on plausible deniability. Why not just go the extra mile?
Yeah.
And I'm told I've never read Terry Pratchett, but I hear Terry Pratchett is another one who kind of does that fantasy sci-fi, integrates humor really, really well.
Andy Weir's pretty good with humor.
Yeah, so I mean, it's such fantasy and sci-fi are such great genres to integrate it into. Why it's not done better, I don't understand. But this book is definitely one of those ones that it's done well.
Yeah. Well, I think books like this and the others we've mentioned make it clear that the people who think the genres don't have much humor, they haven't read enough.
Yes.
If you explored enough, you're going to find a lot of really funny stories.
Yeah, even Gideon. When we read Gideon, there's some great comedic moments.
Oh, yeah.
A lot of it's just deep sarcasm, but that still plays out so well, one for the character and two for the situation. So, yes, definitely excellent execution. William Goldman, hands down. I want to read more of his things because I feel like this is such a great work. I feel like the rest of his stuff not being as, like, known is kind of unfortunate. And I want to see if there's a reason for it or if it's just, you know, this one overshadowed everything.
I think the reason for it is that it wasn't this.
Yeah.
His other books are very different from this.
Yeah,
like Magic is a very different sort of story from this.
Yeah. And I think, too, like, we're seeing that now with Stephen King, who's kind of typically been this horror writer. And now he's been in sci-fi now, and now he's been in fantasy. And I feel like maybe the downfall of William Goldman is he tried to do them too soon without doing enough of one type of thing. And then going into the next genre.
And he clearly didn't write often enough to keep his name in front of people.
Yes, but his work is so detailed that I understand why.
Okay.
You have to work so hard and have so many details and such a great idea in the first place. Like, the reason he doesn't have a lot is because he worked on quality, not quantity.
Okay.
And that's just him. Like, Stephen King has quality and quantity because he just doesn't stop.
Yeah.
But, you know, William Goldman, too, was a family man, and he had all kinds of other things going on in his life. He was a man of many talents. So, yeah, if you ever look at him, he's kind of interesting to look up. He's got some interesting things. And, of course, that's just from the introduction, where probably 5% of it is true.
Yeah.
But the fact that he had the thought to be that way and to, like, puff himself up the way he did, hilarious. Like, why not? You're already taking that extra step. Why not?
I think you also have to point out, even though this isn't really a retelling, I think this book is one of a few books that set the foundation for today's explosion of taking mythology and fairy tales and retelling it in a modern vein.
Yes.
He took traditional fantasy tropes and rewrote it and just made fun of it all.
Yeah. This book is literally like
classic.
Yes. It's kind of like Blue Man Group, where Blue Man Group became such a big art form, but it's contemporary art making fun of contemporary art. And that's kind of what he did here. It is a fantasy romance making fun of fantasy romances. And it's beautiful.
I'm just checking our website.
I think it is. Yeah. Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah, we have it.
We do have him.
Yep.
Okay. He's on our top
This book
tales
is on our
list.
top tales list.
Yeah, it's on our top tales list.
Whee! But yeah. So yeah, if you have not had the pleasure of reading The Princess Bride, go ahead and read it. I mean, even if you've seen the movie, you probably read the book. But if you can get this 30th edition, do it. There's those little extras in it. Just go the extra mile for a story that we already know and love.
I wonder if there's any really good collectible editions like Folio Society or something like that. I haven't looked it up.
Yeah, I didn't look it up either. I just am so partial to this one because my husband
If there aren't, then it should be. Because, I mean, that's nice, but the paper here is one step above newsprint.
Yeah, it's a soft cover. It's, you know. It is what it is, but it's a fun read. I definitely recommend it. Of course, it has a delightful map.
Can't have fantasy without a map.
You gotta have a map. It's not even, like, I'm amazed. It's kind of a cheesy map. I love how cheesy the illustrations are.
But looks like the kind of maps that were drawn back in, 1500s, 1600s for things like that.
I love, too, where is it? Oh, I just saw it. Here's where the picnic happened. Where they poison each other. Like, there's little, like, indicators all over this map of the things that happened. The duel happened here. There's two little swords at the top of the cliff. This is the Cliff of Insanity. There's the Armada. There's the giant eel bay. Like, I just love it. It's It's so good. There's just so many little detail things in here that just make it so wonderful.
Yeah.
And the dialogue's gold. Always has been.
I personally just hate it when publishers do something like, an anniversary collectible edition and they make it soft cover and print it on newsprint paper. This thing's going to be deteriorated before she's gone.
Absolutely.
That's not the way to do an anniversary edition.
And this was my bookmark. It's my husband wrote it when we first dated. As you wish. I kept it in there. But yeah. Yeah, I'm very partial to it.
Every time I hear that, I think of the robot in the original Battlestar Galactica.
Yeah. Yes. I think of this when I hear As You Wish.
Oh.
Or usually I think As You Wish, My Master from Star Wars. Those are my top two. But yeah, that's all I have to say about this particular edition of Princess Bride.
Okay.
Love it or hate it, worth a shot at reading it. It's even a great fun
I got to read it. Like I say, I've seen the movie, never read this book. I got to read it.
You can borrow it. Whenever you get to it. You know where it is.
I forgot to bring Man of a Thousand Faces.
Oh, well. We'll do our book swap sometime, eventually. Okay. We don't live far from each other, so.
No. I could probably throw it over here.
Yeah, you could. Just ship it down river.
Yeah.
I'll be at the other bridge waiting. But yeah. Well, thanks, guys, for listening. I love Princess Bride. Go give it a watch. Like and subscribe. Let us know what you want us to read. If you ever have suggestions, we'll add it to our to-be-read list, or we'll die trying.
Facebook, our website.
Yeah.
YouTube. Leave comments.
Yep, we've got everything everywhere, so hit us up.
And Etsy.
And Etsy. Yes, we have our Etsy now up and running. Telltale Books LLC on Etsy. We sell used books. Duplicates from our collection, and sometimes we look out at different places and find really great collector's items. So
yeah, she keeps her eyes open for stuff she can get really cheap at thrift stores that are in really nice shape that we can kind of spruce up and offer.
Yep.
For
we
tiny
put in
bit
a lot
more.
Of work.
We're still not charging all that much. I think our most expensive one was one you put in for $40,
and it's like a collection of like 10 books.
Yeah, everything else we've had in there has been half that price, so
yeah,
or less. So
yeah,
it's a good store.
And everything you buy from us goes back into us trying to pursue our dream of being able to publish later.
It's going into a bank account towards someday when we can publish a book.
Which we have some in the works. I'm still working on Herland. I just got some illustrations knocked out. So.
And I'm trying to decide on one for me to do. There's
I
so many
you had
good
one
ones
already. There was an H.G. Wells you were toying
When the
with.
Sleeper Wakes, but I don't know. I'm looking for something else, something a little more that'll have a little more appeal to contemporary readers.
Okay.
Even though I love H.G. Wells and When the Sleeper Wakes,
I'm really
one of a
story.
very few people who love H.G. Wells today. So I'm looking for something else for my first book.
Alrighty. Well, have fun with your search. There's so many good ones.
I know. It's hard to decide.
The Purple Cloud. What?
It's hard to decide.
Yeah, I know it is. There's so many good ones out there. So, all right. Thanks for joining us, guys. We will see you next time.
Bye.
Bye.